I suppose I started thinking about this kind of thing back in about 1991, just before Virtual Futures itself was first held at the University of Warwick. And back then I was reading a book by a Mexican-American philosopher called Manuel de Landa, and the book was called War in the Age of Intelligent Machines, a work of philosophy of technology, a truly brilliant book. De Landa was, of course, more interested in the general idea of autonomous machines than its instantiation in warfare, but he chose the example of warfare to draw out his philosophical themes. One of the, if we can have a slide, one example that's in his book is of this autonomous machine from World War II. It's basically a remote-controlled, tracked mine, a German system called the leichte Ladungsträger, and it's remote-controlled. Those of you who are a little bit older, who remember the 1980s, may remember a toy version of this, basically called the Big Track. If you haven't seen that, I think you'd find it amusing to look it up and consider how that form trickled down into being merely a toy for children. But this is one of the earliest forms of such autonomous killing machines, or at least it's one step along an evolutionary path towards the kind of systems that Mark has just been talking about. The analogy with high-frequency trading algorithms was something that was suggested to me by a talk by Kevin Slavin, which is online, a wonderful TED talk, where he talked about the increasing algorithmization of the markets and how that could be gamed. He wasn't thinking about warfare at the time, but it did prompt me into thinking, what are the analogies to be drawn between trading and warfare? And since then I've been looking at and keeping an eye on all the systems that are being developed. To name some of the other ones that Mark didn't mention, and some of these have been reported, they're unverifiable, they're rumors, some of them have been confirmed. It has been reported that autonomous turrets with full executive capacity have been employed as defensive turrets around, for example, Russian nuclear plants. Those reports have been disputed, but it seems very likely that the Russians have started doing this, given that they've been trying to create their own equivalent of DARPA, one of the products of which is this, and I'm sorry about the very poor image. It turns out that nearly all of the videos that had been posted of this system have weirdly disappeared from the internet. This is the MRK, Mobile Robotechnic Complex. And this is a fully autonomous, larger scale version of the leichte Ladungsträger I showed you earlier. But it carries a gun, a little bit like the Barrett sniper rifle. That gives it a range of 5 kilometers. And it has full executive capacity. To come back to Manuel de Landa back in 1991 basically gave us the model for thinking about what these systems are. A division between having advisory capacity and executive capacity. That is, have you got a killing machine that needs a human to press a button? Or at least that has a button that a human could press to say, stop doing that? Or will it do it entirely on its own? Virtually all of the systems that we've been seeing and that Mark and I have seen over the past, 6, 7 years, maybe even longer, even if they are used as advisory capacity systems, they still have built-in full executive capacity. They could act totally autonomously. You just have to trust governments or companies when they say, "Oh, we're never going to do that. There'll always be a human there," kind of, doing the right thing. These systems are being developed across the world, not just by the Russians, but by the US, Israel Aerospace Industries, Harpy, and now Harop systems are loitering drones that can attack entirely autonomously. As Mark mentioned, Samsung have developed a system. The US uses the South Korean Aegis system too. And I think I'll try and wrap up here. I just want to bring one point about these systems forward, which is thinking about them in terms of war. When Mark brought up the South Korean one, and he says it operates on the demilitarized zone, that's basically a very, very large border between North and South Korea, two global players who are bitterly opposed to one another. That's a land border. And a land border is not just a military concept, it's also a civilian concept, as Brexit has brought home to us, I think. And it occurred to me recently that there's a chap over in the US called Donald Trump who's very keen on building a border wall between the US and Mexico. And at some point down the line, if Trump stays in power, one of these companies, their lobbyists, are going to manage to get the message through to him that you might not be able to build a physical wall along the model of the Great Wall of China or Hadrian's Wall, but a wall can still be a wall without being physical, and we have the technology to make that happen.